Hi everyone, welcome to Wins and Losses, where wins are celebrated and losses are lessons. I'm your host, Renee Seiler, and I wanted to do this show because I think in the entrepreneurial space, we do a lot of talking about success and not a lot of talking about the hard times that led to that success. And to that end, I brought a couple of my friends along, Alvionna Brewster and Latisha B. Russell. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Welcome to my living room. But I love your stories and I can't wait to share them with our audience. So I'd like to start with you, Alvionna. Just tell us a little bit about you and your company.
Very good. Thank you for having us. I am Alvionna Brewster. I am the CEO and founder of Black Nurse Entrepreneurs. I've been a nurse for almost 20 years, and then I branched into entrepreneurship. And I thought, we really need an area where we can have a safe place for Black nurses to learn, launch, build, and grow their businesses and be supportive of one another. And so here we are. We're about 10 years later.
Wow. What was it about needing a space for Black nurses? What was missing in that place?
We had some associations and organizations and things like that, but nothing was really focused solely on entrepreneurship. And I always believe that Black nurse has a very specific and strategic skill set that's so specialized that hardly anybody else can do it. But one thing about it is we weren't branching into entrepreneurship like I really thought we could. We could use the skill set, we could understand business concepts, and then we could go out and create generational legacies and I always say generational health and wealth for years to come.
All right. What's the special skill set that Black nurses have?
I think the special skill set is nursing itself, being able to understand patients, being able to take care of them from the moment a person is conceived all the way into helping them to usher into the next life or the next phase of our life. And so we take care of mind, body, spirit. We are there during the most precious times of a person's life. And it takes a very special person to be there at the bedside for day in and day out to make sure a person gets healthy and well and can discharge home.
Latisha B. Russell, tell me about your business.
Thank you so much. I am Latisha B. Russell. I am co-founder of Russell Craigwell HR Consulting and founder of Latisha B. Russell. Ultimately, I have created this business around emotional wellness and creating that safe space for individuals and corporations so that they know that all things emotional wellness are important, right? Navigating burnout in the workplace and what does that look like and what does that feel like? And all too often we say that vulnerability and strength can't reside in the same lane. But when I go through the various coaching and trainings around the HR space, I'm here to tell you that it absolutely can. And so it's not talked about a lot in the corporations. And so thinking about the pandemic, right? That is when things really came up and bubbled up. And that's when we began to talk about it a little bit more. And so super excited just to be in this space where people feel safe and heard and understood when it comes to all things emotional wellness in HR.
Do you find that for Black employees that is a real burden for us, that we can't show our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses in the workplace?
It is. Black employees and men, right? And I think when I recognized it was the more of the men is, I remember doing a training and I talked about the women and how we a lot of times just hide our emotions, and it's not just what we might do during the day in our jobs, but it's when we get home and we're taking care of all the domestic things, right? Our families. And a man stood up and he said, but what about the men, right? The men are suffering and we don't talk about it.
Wow.
And in that moment I had to pivot and say, man, you're absolutely right. And so I began to, while I still talk to the women, I still ensure that I am also talking about and not forgetting about the male figures as well.
Wow, so, that's so important. I think you're right. We don't really hear. Women are like, I'm finally gonna, I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna grow, I'm gonna take care of myself.
Yeah.
But you're right, we don't really hear a lot of that. All right, the show is called Wins and Losses. So we're gonna talk about wins and losses.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, Alvionna, about a big win you've had.
I think for me, one of the biggest wins, outside of really just being able to create the community and get Black nurses together, we're about 22,000 members. One of the biggest wins that I had came in year 22, where I'm a nurse educator by trade, right? And so I decided I was going to teach other nurses how to launch their own COVID testing facility. I had been doing it for a little while. I got great mentorship, and I think the thing that was the biggest win was being able to not only help them to be able to have their own testing, but for me, it was my ability to recognize that, oh, I could teach doing something that I love to do and do it one time and then repurpose that content over and over and over. So that single course was the thing that really skyrocketed and added momentum to the business. And it was really quick and easy. It was a 2-hour course, and we were able to really turn a significant profit from it. And I was like, oh, I like teaching, and I like the fact that we're able to go into communities and help them with testing with a trusted member of the community. Mm-hmm. And so that was probably my biggest win within Black nurse entrepreneurs, for sure.
And you forgot to say I like money, because I mean, who doesn't? Right.
This is true.
Yeah, right. Okay. And Latisha, what about you? What was the big win for you?
Wow. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, right? And so when I think about a big win, it's the fact that I'm still standing, if I can be honest with you. I didn't know if I could do it. I've worked in the corporate space for so long that I knew consistently I would have a check every 2 weeks, right? And so when I think about a win, it is truly the fact that I'm still standing through all of the trials, through all of the days where I was like, I don't know where this money coming from, right? Through the late nights, through my children saying, Mommy, when are you gonna stop working? And so it's more personal for me. And so that win is the fact that I am still here. My business is still thriving, and I absolutely still love what I do, and I would do it 10 times over.
So you mentioned you're still standing, which I think is one of those things that's really, underrated. How did you understand that was a win?
For me, thinking about all things emotional wellness, right? I was told that I would never amount to anything growing
By who?
up. My father. And that stuck with me. And no matter how many times you try to run from it, in all things that you do, you're consistently trying to prove yourself, right? And so for me, it's personal. And so I'm always, through adversity, going to think about, all right, what else can I do to pivot, to navigate? What else can I do so that I can always prove that while you thought that you were going to knock me down, you didn't. And so that is just one of the many reasons that I pour into other people. That is why emotional wellness is so important. That is why being empathetic is so important to me. And so me still standing, it's a statement for me, right? And it's a statement showing that even though you doubted me, I'm still here.
Wow.
So
powerful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the hard times.
Yeah.
And Alvionna, I know 2022 was a big year for you, but it was also a really challenging year, wasn't it?
It was.
Tell me about it.
It's interesting because it was the highest of highs and the lowest lows in within like 6-7 months, which was interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, I was helping to teach COVID testing, but I also had my own COVID testing business, and we were doing consulting and stuff like that. And so we were starting to pivot more into events. I had done a couple of events that were on a smaller scale, and now's the big time. Now it's time to launch a major conference, right? And we thought we were ready, and in so many ways we were, until we weren't. And so I think one of the biggest lessons from that was, I always tell people, be careful not to go too big too quickly. What ended up happening was we launched a conference, and we had a certain number in mind. They always ask you, what's your budget? How many people do you want? Things like that. And we actually went with the second cheapest location, which is interesting. And when we didn't meet the numbers, the attendee numbers, we couldn't get out of the contract, or we couldn't lessen the contract. So when you see a 6-figure debt staring you in your face, that you're not prepared for it, that's something that will take you back. And it has taken literally 1.5 years to really kind of come out of that. It was not only a financial loss, a major devastating financial loss, but it was also an emotional type of thing, a mental. I went through an array of just emotions and just trying to keep myself afloat, not only the business, but also my person, trying to keep me afloat. So when she says perseverance and making it through, just still standing, is something that I can totally relate to, because the fact that I'm here today and able to communicate and talk to you guys lets me know that we've all been through something very devastating, and I thank God that we are here and able to even speak on it.
Can you put into words what it was like when the numbers weren't coming in the way you needed them to?
I noticed we had the event in June, and I noticed around late March, early April that, I don't think we're going to hit the numbers. It helped to teach me a lot about looking at numbers, really understanding marketing, really understanding sales and stuff like that, right? And so the moment I looked, and I was like, I don't know. I went back to my team and I said, hey, I don't know that we're going to meet our numbers. And it was a gut punch. And it was one of those things where one of my team members is like, hey, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to fill seats and get people in. And we tried that. We did an array of things. But, summer of 22 was a challenging season for a lot of us. Airline, gas, things like that were sky high. There were other events going on. So it was just a challenging season. But definitely the devastation of when you look at a piece of paper and you're like, oh my goodness. And then you see the dollar amount that you're facing, but the show still has to go on.
I think about this sometimes, like when you have to still deliver.
Yes.
What is it like when, so in the back of the house, as it were, you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have what we need. But the people out there paid for something, they expect something. So what carried you through that?
Well, for sure, the grace of God, obviously, being there for me, friends and family, support system, but dedication and determination. I am very dedicated to the community of Black nurses. I am dedicated to the community of Black entrepreneurs and Black people as a whole. And I know that if I allow the enemy to mute the message, then there's a lot of people who would suffer. And so what I'm always going to do is show up and show out no matter what. Now, if I have to step off stage and get myself together, then we do what we have to do. But as soon as the lights come on and it's go time, it literally is go time, because there was a message that needed to be delivered. And I thank God, because there were people that came to me after the event. This is the best event we've been to. Wow. And because of your event, I was able to launch this business, or I was able to connect with this person, or I got this contract. And so moments like that means it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. Wow.
What about you, Latisha? First of all, I want to ask you about the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. Why did you end up doing that?
I'm still doing it. And I'm looking to transition here soon. But the reason is, this is, you hear all the time, like it's not, like, this is what I enjoy. And I've been in HR for about 26, 27 years. And while I'm still in it, in this entrepreneur space, it's different when it's for you, right? And so you get to learn, like, I can do all the stuff that I'm doing for other people for yourself, right? And so that is why I'm really excited about the transition. That is why I'm needing to transition, because now it's about what I can continue to do for my business and knowing that other people out there need it. And so when I think about losses, your story, it's a few things. When I launched the business, I have the one business, under the HR umbrella of emotional wellness, and the other HR side of it. It was easier for one business, right? Because it was all things that I dealt with growing up, right? And so it came natural, because these were the things that I experienced from a trauma lens. And so now I'm able to pour into people. And I thought it would be just as easy when we launched, because I have a business partner, right? When we launched this HR business, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. We come with 26, 27 years of experience. People need us.
First of all, she said it's going to be easy. I don't mean to laugh, but everybody out there is laughing because it's right. Okay.
Right? And then we would ask the questions of, when you think about HR, what comes to mind? And everybody consistently said, you hire and fire people. But no, we don't. We do so much more. And so we began investing in some amazing coaching programs, but then the bill added up, right? And when we began launching programs, no one bought. Because they didn't know. First, we had to really educate on what HR is, because now you're thinking it's one thing, but it's so much more. So when we're trying to show people and educate people, this is why you need HR in your business, it was like, oh, no one ever taught me that. But you all gave me free services for so long. Why am I about to invest now, right? And so it became really difficult, and we found ourselves in $40,000, $50,000 debt. And then the minute we would continue to launch programs, we realized that, man, it's not as easy as we thought, right? We can't just rely on the fact that we have 27 plus years of experience. We've got to still get out there and figure out, how do we truly educate people so that they understand and know that I need HR in my business, right? And knowing that I need it on the front end versus the back end. So it was harder right, than I had truly anticipated, because I did think it was going to be easy. I mean, y'all go get all these years of experience that we have and be able to grow your organization, right, before you're in trouble from a legal lens. And so it was just, I call it, it's not a loss, it's a lesson, because it allowed us to dig deeper. It forced you to think outside of the box, because there is no way that I can continue going into this space of, I have X amount of years under my belt and you should know what HR is, versus let me sit down, right? Let's unpack what we do so that you know, and it becomes a bit easier or seamless for you to know that it's time for me to invest in HR services. So it was a tough lesson, a really tough lesson, but it was worth it. Right, because now I know how to pivot and do something a little different.
So it sounds like there was a messaging issue. And so how did you handle that? Exactly.
We had some amazing coaches, right? And we were not always on the same page, my business partner and I, because she kept saying, we need to niche down. And I was like, but no, we don't. We're going to miss people. And we really did have to kind of niche down and first continue to educate on who we are, what we do, give examples of, if you don't have HR in your business, these are some of the things that could happen. And then giving clear-cut examples of what we do. Performance management, soft skills, SOPs, so many other things, versus bringing us in to hire and fire folks, right? And so we had to force ourselves to truly niche down so that we knew that we weren't just talking to everybody. And somebody would see that in themselves and in their business and then say, all right, I need you. And that's what's now happening.
I know in 2022, which was your great year and your not so great year, you had to do some pivoting, right?
Sure.
Tell me about that. What did that look like?
Some of the pivoting that I had to do was really, I had to take a step back, honestly. There just was a time where it was chaotic and too many things were happening. I had to pull out of some of the things, some of the programs and things I was in, some of the vision. You know, whenever you have a business, you have a certain vision on how the business is supposed to look at certain stages of it. And that vision evaporated. And so I had to pull back on what I thought we were going to be doing. And I had to focus on really survival, staying alive and keeping the business afloat, but also keeping myself afloat. And I just had to say no. You know, I had to understand that no is an answer, and it's an okay answer for some of the things, just simply because I just could not do some of the things that I thought I was going to be able to do at that moment, right? One of the most important things that I want to touch upon is really why I'm even a part of the TSP community. Let me just say this. In June of 22 was my first TSP event. And I was sitting there, a shell of myself, because I knew what was coming, because July was the event. I knew what was coming, and I was sitting there. I heard a couple of things. I heard Lamar's story about, hey, when I heard my first event, only 40 people came, and half of them came with the free ticket type of thing. So I was like, yeah, I know what that's about. And then I was sitting amongst Black excellence at that event. I saw thousands of 6, 7, and 8 figure Black entrepreneurs. And I said, you know what? You have a decision to make. God spoke to me in that moment and says, either you continue to struggle and try to figure things out on your own, because the bill's gonna be there. The business is gonna be there. Challenges are gonna be there. So you can either try to figure these things out on your own for the next 6 months until you come to the next TSP event, or you can get within a coaching program to get around people who understand business at a higher level than what you've been doing business at. You need to be around people who have failed multiple times and have come back. You need to be around people who have won extraordinarily, just on a high level that you may have never seen before, right? And so that was a pivot that I had to make that I didn't even know I needed, because before then I had been in little bitty small coaching programs, you know, the little $500 one, little $1,000 one. And in that moment I learned you can no longer nickel and dime your next generation. You're gonna have to put some money and some skin in the game in order to be able to continue to create and grow this thing. And so that is when I joined TSP.
Did you ever want to quit?
There was a few times that I didn't know if I was gonna survive. It wasn't necessarily about quitting for me because I've already been through some tough times. So I knew God was going to bring me out of it. I just didn't know how and what that looked like. And I didn't know at what point, right? So I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be August is my quit day or is it going to be next year, whatever. But I wouldn't say that I truly was going to just give up and give in, because I've built this community since 2015. I've seen some amazing things happen within Black nurse entrepreneurs. The stories alone are just brilliant. And so I just kind of think that I was called to do this, a specific purpose that I was designed for it. So it's like, where else am I going to go? What else am I going to do? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I don't operate in the calling, I feel like other people are going to suffer. So it's like, what do we need to do in order to get ourselves back on track? If that means taking a step back, if that means getting good, solid coaching, mentorship, if that means crying and praying, whatever is necessary in order for us to operate in our calling is the one thing that I felt like absolutely I'm going to have to figure out.
One of the things in this entrepreneurial journey that I keep hearing again and again, I talked about pivot, but I also think it has to do with being able to change what you thought success was going to look like, because what you thought isn't necessarily what it is now today. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I do. I agree with it because God's plan and man's plan are two different things. And sometimes we have this amazing vision, we have all these wonderful things that we want, and God's like, that's not quite the track that I wanted for you. And you have to be flexible and adaptable and be able to kind of go with that. There's market changes that happen. There's new software, there's new technology that comes up, there's new needs. Your customer base has new needs that you may not uncover until you hang around them long enough. And you're like, oh, we got to pivot and do something different because this is where the need is. Yeah. So within entrepreneurship, yes, we do have a vision. Yes, we do have a purpose, but sometimes it does change a little bit and we got to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Latisha, do you agree with that? Like what you started out with, does that look like what your business is now?
Absolutely not. I'll go back just briefly if I can, because when you spoke, something resonated. I remember in 2022, and I was at Live, I think it was Live, and I knew that I needed this community, even though, on one hand, my business was thriving, on the other hand, I knew I needed some help, right? And I knew who my audience was, so I thought. And I was sitting there like, man, I really want to join this community, but I don't know if I can afford it. And I joined it. With tears in my eyes, I cried like a baby. I remember going and I was talking to one of the coaches and I said, I need this, but I don't know where I'm going to get the money from. And there is something that I live by, and that is do it afraid. Yes. And when I tell you I did it afraid, and when I say did it afraid, my husband didn't know the investment that I just made. I was like, I'm going to ask for forgiveness later, right?
It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
It was, right? Okay? It absolutely was. But it has been amazing. It's this journey, this program has been amazing. And so when I started, absolutely, I knew what success was. And I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I was doing. But then the minute I got into it, they reeled me back in and was like, but who are you talking to? Who's your target audience?
Wow.
What are you going to do about it, right? What was working for you clearly it's not working for you in the manner that you thought it was. And so it literally pulled everything else apart. They pulled everything, and I was on board. I like, okay, give it to me. I'm paying. Then that was the thing. I was willing to lean in because I knew it was an investment that I had made, and I knew I couldn't afford it really, but I needed it. I needed this program. I needed the coaches. And so it was worthwhile because they were able to reel me back in, allow me to truly establish what my business needed, who I was talking to, so that I can then feel more confident about who am I? Who am I serving, right? Why am I doing this? And my why became clear.
If you were somebody watching this, watching you two, what would you want them to take away from your story, from Alvionna's story? What would you want to hear?
You know, there will be times that you feel that you can't do it, right? There will be times that you think you want to give up, but that is when you dig deep and use that get back up muscle and do it again, right? In every moment of adversity, you use that get back up muscle and you do it again, you pull the lesson out of it, right? Nothing is a failure. There are so many times that we think that, man, I'm afraid of failing. Fail forward and do it again. Right. And that is what I live by, and that is what I will continue to tell other people.
I love that. I do believe that failure is an opportunity
Absolutely.
to learn.
It is.
What would you want someone to take away from your story?
I think the power of perseverance and resilience, for sure. I think there is some things that we sometimes just don't talk about enough when it comes to business, because there are challenges. And first of all, having a conversation like this is very much warranted. A lot of times people don't want to be transparent. They're afraid or embarrassed. And truth be told, if we would have had this conversation 6 months ago, I don't think that I would have been able to stand on it. I was still struggling. You know, people would ask me and I would just break down. And so the ability to continue to be resilient and strong is so powerful, but also the ability to ask for help. Be open and transparent, because I think that's how we all learn how to grow within business, is hearing the next story and say, oh, you know, she got through that. This is how I can get through it as well. Or I had something similar. Well, how did you figure this thing out, right? Community, coaching, consistency, those things are so incredibly powerful. We don't put enough emphasis on getting around like-minded people and having someone that you can go to and talk to about this stuff. We absolutely do not put enough emphasis on it. So I know I gave you a lot. Whoever's listening, I want them to take whatever is applicable to them in that moment. Take that and run with it. If you need a good, solid coach, get coaching. Absolutely do not nickel and dime your next generation. That is one of my most favorite sayings that I say, because oftentimes we are too cheap to seek out the next level. We're too cheap, and we got to get out of that.
But I want to hear you, Latisha, talk about Lamar and Ronnie and TSP and what the community has done for you.
And when I joined this community, I didn't know where I was going to get the money from. I just knew I needed it. And I needed when you sit in a room, again, of Black excellence around other people, it's a safe community where you can express what your losses are. On the other side, you can express what your wins are. It's a community that allows you to be vulnerable, right? It's not a community where we go in and you just hear all of the glamour and, oh my goodness, you guys, but it's also when I'm struggling with something from a mental lens, this is the community that pulls us together, right? And so it's more than just, when you think about coaching and you think about this investment, it's so much more, and it truly is that community and the camaraderie. And so when we look forward to January and June and October, those are the moments that we look forward to, right? We're able to build connections outside of the spaces and the months of January, June, and August, right? We can text each other. We have the smaller community. So it's just so much more than that. And it's what many of us need.
Is there anything else you want to add about TSP and Ronnie and Lamar and what they've done for you and your community?
Sure. I would just like to say that I actually have followed them since the Black and Married with Kids days. I didn't put two and two together until I got into TSP. But I had followed them along for so many years. And then when I got into TSP, I saw a glimmer of what my vision looks like and what my company could be should I get around like-minded and do the coaching and things like that, right? I'm like, this is where I'm headed. I just needed a picture of what it looked like. And so for them, I would always say to them is that I would thank them for operating in their calling. Because they chose to say yes, then look how many of us get to benefit from their specific calling and purpose. The moment, if they would have said no or got afraid or backed out or allow a financial setback to allow them to not do this, then a lot of us would be affected. So I commend them for staying the course, persevering through, and for them saying yes to their calling, because we, on the other hand, get to benefit from that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If I were closer, I would get up and hug you. But we're all mic'd up, so everybody's going to just stay seated. This is a hug from afar. You guys, thank you so much for your candor and transparency. This has been a wonderful conversation that I'm sure people will benefit from.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wins and Losses. We'll see you next time.